stood here in front since COVID. My goodness, time sometimes just lapses. So I'm very grateful that we can be here and that we can be in the space. I will share something of what you see around you and what you have seen in the museum at the end. But we will first follow a very short introductory program that marks the start of the conference. Now, colleagues, I want to acknowledge that, as most of you know, this has been a very difficult couple of days for our institution. Not only have we had another urination incident on campus with strong racial undertones, but as you know, most of you might know, we've also lost a student and his friend, young person with a sister on campus after they went missing on Friday. Their bodies were discovered this afternoon, and it does make for a very grim and sad day, Mr. VC, Mr. DVC, for the day. So shall we allow for a moment of silence, just in remembrance of the pain and suffering, indignation, and uncertainties that we sit with as a campus community. Thank you. Chris, when we met this morning, I wondered, goodness, after this weekend, can we and to what extent should we have this conference? But during our breakfast this morning, I realized that perhaps this is the most fitting thing to do. These two universities are very unlikely partners. I don't know if you know this story. Stellenbosch with its apartheid past and Michigan State with its strong African ties and push against apartheid also in academic sense would in 30, 40 years time not venture into associating with our university, Chris. And we had a brief conversation about that this morning. And thank you to partners in this room. And it's really good to see some of our partners again. And in particular, thank you to our director, Bongani Mgijima. This unlikely relationship is actually the relationship that allows us to think about what it means to be joined in time. Different understandings, different histories, different experiences, but locked into an experience of time that allows us to find each other through the experience of Ubuntu. It is the two most unlikely partners that actually allows us also in this very painful time, and understand, Chris, your university is also in the midst of very painful experiences. It is actually that I think that brings us together under the blanket, a very safe blanket of Ubuntu that allows us an experience that helps us to understand that actually, with our unlikely stories and pasts, the time is absolutely apt to connect and to find each other. Now, of course, Ubuntu is not only a safe blanket, but it is a blanket that forces something into the open that allows us to be truly human. So over the next couple of days, we will also be confronted with a vulnerability and an openness as two institutions that will also surround our sense-making as humans, as academics, as scholars, as colleagues, and over the last couple of years also as friends. And in that sense, I do think, Chris and Prof. Wim, indeed, this conference is the most fitting experience that we could have as two university communities over the next couple of days. To do an introduction and in a sense a welcoming also on behalf of our institution, I call up Prof. Nico Koopman, our Deputy Vice Chancellor responsible for social impact transformation and personnel, to the fore. Prof. Nico, we look forward to be welcomed by you. And thank you very much that you can be here tonight.
It's so nice how Leslie says it. It's looking forward to be welcomed by you. You get energy for the welcome. Thank you, Leslie. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to welcome you here. I start by welcoming somebody whom we should not welcome our Rector Prof. Wim de Villiers, but we say specifically welcome to you. We're glad you're spending this afternoon here with us, the early evening. We know throughout the days you did already this is your fourth speech for the day, indicating that I was asking colleague Wim, how many did you do over the 7 years that you DVC? So we must start, that you VC, we must start multiply now. But Wim, we know there are two places where you thrive, when you with the university choir and when you're in the university museum, Bongani, you can proudly nod. So very welcome to you also here. We say welcome to all staff and students from Stellenbosch University. We see various staff members here. Some of them will participate in the program. And then welcome to staff and students from other campuses. Welcome also to our societal partners. And then specifically welcome to colleagues from institutions abroad. I have met some colleagues from other universities in the United States, Kurt and Marcia, old friends of the museum. And then really a special word of welcome to our partner in these Ubuntu dialogues, and specifically in this conference, our colleagues from Michigan University, and very specifically Prof. Chris Long here in front. We welcome you. Colleague Leslie will fully introduce you, but you leading this team here, and we're very glad that you are with us. We also think about your colleague Prof. Jabbar Bennett, who wanted to be here and who was in fact already on his way, but due to a family matter had to return and cannot be here. So thank you that you lead the team together with Prof. Titus Awukuse, Dr. Marita Gilbert, Dr. Ashley Green, Mrs. Alison Church, and Dr. Leo Zulu. To each one of you, very, very welcome. In welcoming you, colleagues, I just want to say one word about the notion of Ubuntu. Ubuntu was used in a very particular way also implicitly exactly 50 years ago by that great South African leader, the late Steve Bantu Biko. He made a speech and he challenged religious organizations and cultural organizations, intellectual organizations, and said, please bestow upon this country a more human face. And if we look at the high levels of inhumaneness, violation of dignity that we experience in our country, on the continent of Africa, and worldwide, this plea of Steve Biko has so much relevance and urgency, and we need to repeat it, to say our Ubuntu dialogues are in search of a more humane face for our societies and also for our campuses. And Steve Biko specifically pleaded also for the togetherness, Ubuntu referring to togetherness. We cannot do it alone. We need to do it together. It's a time really where we need communion, where we need to take hands in a very special way. I welcome you with this reminder of the consolation of Ubuntu, and also with this reminder of the imperative of Ubuntu. And may our reflections these days take us further on this journey. May I also say, it's in the Hindu tradition today, Diwali, the feast of lights, the feast of the triumph of light over darkness, of good over bad. May we also do our reflections in that wonderfully inspiring context. Baie welkom.
Baie dankie, Professor Koopman. Colleagues, indeed, as Nico said, it is a bit like welcoming back a family this evening. And I do think, I wonder, Bongani, if you look back now, whether at the beginning, Kurt, Marsha, a number of others, whether you thought that we would be here. It is quite special. I want to acknowledge another member of the rectorate, Dr. Ronel Retief, our registrar, that is here. Ronel, of course, we don't take it for granted that after a long day, you are here. Colleagues, I'd like to welcome our VC to the front. Now, you know that he's the Vice Chancellor of Stellenbosch University, and in our terms, that is the principal of the university. And Mariki, I don't see you immediately. Mariki is here. Mariki has wonderful QR codes of all of us. So if you have nothing to do tonight and the jet lag sets in, etc., you can QR all of our CVs and stories, including that of the principal, the Vice Chancellor. But I thought it might be fitting to just say something about Provim and the space. Not a lot of you will know that this was his primary school when he grew up, and Wim helped us to remember or to understand him better the other day by telling us that he was regarded as a very naughty youngster in the space. So when I welcome the principal to the fore, I don't only want you to picture him as a youngster in his primary school, but I do want you to picture him as someone who almost 2 months after you was appointed in 2015 as Vice Chancellor of this university, and someone who has guided this university well into his second term. And Wim, something of the story and the legacy of Ubuntu, we most definitely also connect to the story of you as Vice Chancellor. So welcome to the front. Thanks, Wim.
Thank you very much, Leslie, for that kind introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here. Good evening, colleagues and students, community partners. Welcome to you all. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to introduce the Ubuntu dialogues as a kickoff to what I will believe will be an engaging week with positive outcomes that will not only propel us into action, but will help us to sustain the action. And that is what we really need as well. Not only propelling, but also sustaining action long after the event has taken place. Rethink, revisit, reimagine. And that's the theme of this week's conference, which is a natural progression of the work that has been done by these projects since its inception in 2019. It's been funded by the Mellon Foundation, and without their generous support, none of this would have been possible. So a special thank you to them as well. So a little bit of background for those who don't know. The Ubuntu Dialogues is an exchange between Michigan State University, East Lansing, Michigan, in the United States, and Stellenbosch University, with the aim to rethink, revisit, and reimagine the values associated with Ubuntu and how these values could generate a meaningful, transformative, cross-continental conversation amongst scholars, students, and practitioners in the museum and archive spaces. There's lovely spaces that you also see here, and they're so beautifully utilized. Now, I spent, I thought I was recruited from England to the United States in '95, and I thought I would spend a quick 18 months in the United States. And it turned into 18 years. So I spent 18 years at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. Now, Michigan State University, you're known as the Spartans. All right. And they also, sometimes they're not that bad at basketball. But University of Kentucky is the Wildcats. The Wildcats, we're supposed to be a powerhouse in college basketball, but always the games between UK and MSU, they were fierce. They were very fierce. So it's really wonderful to welcome you all here to, in a sense, keep these memories for me alive as well. So the program comprises 3 components. a seminar speaker exchange program. Secondly, a student graduate fellowship, and thirdly, virtual student dialogues. And I'm pleased to report that over the past 4 years, 24 young and emerging scholars, 12 from Stellenbosch University and 12 from MSU, and 60 students, 30 from each university, have participated in the project. So this is what's happened over these past number of years, and this conference specifically will now provide an opportunity to reflect on what those who led and participated in the project, what they've learned, and how, and this is probably the kicker, how the project could be extended productively beyond the current funding cycle. Because if there's one thing I've learned as Vice Chancellor and now serving in my 8th year, is every conversation with a Vice Chancellor always ends up about money. So I'd like to acknowledge members from MSU senior management team who were part of the delegation to SU. You arrived, as I understand, on Saturday evening. Is jet lag involved? But I certainly hope that the hospitality would help to the jet lag to settle quickly. But it's a long flight. We really appreciate it. Prof. Nico has mentioned Dr. Bennett, who unfortunately cannot attend, but Professor Chris Lang, who's the MSU Foundation Professor, Dean of the College of Arts and Letters, Dean of the MSU Honors College, Professor of Philosophy and the co-leader of the MSU Ethics Institute, Professor Titus Awokuse, Professor and Associate Dean, International Studies and Programs at MSU, Dr. Marita Gilbert, Associate Dean of Diversity and Campus Inclusion, College of Osteopathic Medicine at MSU, Dr. Ashley Green, Assistant Dean of the Administration, International Studies and Programs at MSU, Ms. Alison Church, Associate Director of International Corporate and Foundation Relations, International Studies and Program at MSU, Dr. Leo Zulu, who's the Interim Director of the African Studies Center and an Associate Professor in the Department of Geography, Environmental and Spatial Sciences at MSU. Is there anybody left at MSU? Okay. I'd also like to mention Professor Jamie Monson, Director of African Studies and the Principal Investigator of the Ubuntu Dialogues Project at MSU, is unfortunately unable to attend due to health considerations, but who may actually be attending online via Zoom. But I really want to thank her for all the great work that she's been doing. So I really hope you find the next week very inspiring. I must acknowledge my colleagues from Stellenbosch University who've been driving this project. And building purposeful partnerships is very much a core of one of our strategic themes. It's part of our vision. And by doing this, you're helping us to realize that vision. So it's become almost a truism that we say diversity brings greater creativity and a varied way of viewing our world. But actually the LSE, the London School of Economics, has noted a true correlation between higher inclusivity and transformation and higher innovation. So a correlation between higher inclusivity and transformation and higher innovation. And we have certainly seen the fruits of this. And at Stellenbosch University, making our learning and teaching environment more inclusive through multilingualism, amongst others, we have also increased our opportunities for innovation. And similarly, by continuing to create and promote platforms like the Ubuntu Dialogues, we can grow and collaborate with a worldview. I think, as Leslie said, this has been a tough few days for our campus. It's actually been a tough few months for our campus, because we continue to experience challenges on our quest for transformation. And we absolutely abhor, condemn unreservedly incidents of racial, gender-based violence, alcohol-related incidents that create feelings of exclusion. And we will be dealing with these harshly and even more harshly and appropriately. We must, and we are resolute in attempting, we're committed to attempting to ensure a space where every single student, staff member, and colleague feel welcome. We're resolute about, we're committed to that. I strongly condemn any behavior that is contrary not only to upholding basic human rights, but to our values as an organization. E-care, excellence, compassion, accountability, respect, and equity. So whilst we're dealing with these painful incidents as they arise, which result in righteous anger, we're also being proactive in creating platforms like this one and others that encourage in these difficult times, that encourage transparent engagement and that will help to enable an inclusive culture. And I can tell you this, the Justice Kampepe Commission report will reach my office soon. And if the recommendations tell us that more needs to be done, then that is what we will do. If more needs to be done, that is what we will do. The theme, revisit, rethink, reimagine, couldn't be more fitting of our goals for a Stellenbosch University where such diversity is celebrated and protected. So I was at a Times Higher Education conference in New York recently. It was the first real one in person following the pandemic, and it was there was the theme of the conference was, are we as higher educations, are we meeting these rising expectations? And we fall short as higher education institutions. And there was a nice line there, and it's about access, and it's about success. It's not good enough to have access, but not success. And we certainly broadened our access. But the point that I thought that was at the conference is the phrase that we see, and we have talent everywhere. We have talent everywhere, but opportunity not. And it's how we get opportunity to the talent. So I want to say that increasingly is the realization and to state that Stellenbosch University is a national asset. It's a national asset. It's not, it's also of benefit to the continent, and it is of benefit to the globe. But it's increasingly we're pivoting towards being a national service university. And it's a national service university that would help us to build this kind of community and collaboration that has the power to influence very significant change on a global scale. So where the work that we do is of local relevance, but it's regionally impactful, and we're globally competitive. We're internationally recognized research intensive university. So with those words, I really want to welcome the Spartans. I want to welcome all of you, and I hope you have a great week. It's fantastic weather. It is October. It is the most beautiful month. Our students may be a little bit distracted because of exams, just a tiny little bit, but I really want to heartfelt welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor de Villiers, for indeed a set of very heartfelt words of welcome. Jou woorde laat voel my ook veilig na die afgelope paar dae. Dankie daarvoor. And as we open the conference, our co-host, Professor Chris Long, I welcome you to the floor. Now you can also click on his QR code, and Prof shared something of Prof Long just now. I thought, what is it that we have in common, given what I've read from your CV? The one is, Bongani, that the two of you are melon experts. So I'm very sure any other foundation will also welcome the partnership that is Chris and Bongani. And then I think I will, at this stage during this week, see if you can test me on what I still have left in my mind and in my memory of ancient Greek. I see that is your field of expertise, and Prof mentioned something of the multilingual setting and context of our university. I see part of the funding possibilities that you've unlocked is also in teaching underused and less used languages in the context of MSU. So indeed, what a fitting partnership we have. Chris, very welcome. And we look forward to engage with you over the next couple of days.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Vice Chancellor de Villiers. Nico, thank you. As was mentioned, I'm not Jabbar Bennett, as you can see. Jabbar had to return home, as was mentioned. He was got all the way to London, and he had to turn around to attend to his family. They assure me that he himself is okay. But I would like to ask if we could take a deep breath together. And as you let that breath out, I invite you to settle into this beautiful place, becoming open and present to all we will experience together this week. I ask you to send some positive energy and love to Jabbar Bennett and to his family. And I also ask you to pause here for a moment of gratitude to all our loved ones who are not with us here today, but who make our presence here possible and give us the opportunity to share our time together. Our thoughts and hearts are with them as well. There's a passage in the book Holding Change by Adrienne Marie Brown to which I keep returning. And it's written, this passage is written by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, who is an African-American feminist philosopher, thinker, activist. And she writes, "It is not easy to face the death of how things have been and to open up to the vulnerability of how things could be. But we must." So I begin my greeting here with this ritual of breathing and with this passage for the imperative that Gumbs offers us to face the death of how things have been requires embodied practices of vulnerability so that our deepest interconnection might be activated. And I have been very grateful in hearing your remarks this evening to feel a willingness to be vulnerable, a willingness to self-reflect and do the hard work of being together in what is clearly a very challenging time for Stellenbosch University and also for Michigan State University. So now I find myself in a bit of an awkward position because I've been asked to bring greetings from Michigan State University, the Spartans, as was mentioned. And in and of itself, this is a very simple thing. Michigan State University is absolutely thrilled to be in meaningful dialogue with you here at Stellenbosch University. As we revisit, rethink, and reimagine our relationships with one another, the role of Ubuntu in our lives, and new possibilities of being together in across continents and in relation through higher education. But our delegation from Michigan State is actually a multitude. And so I want to speak to that for a moment. We have faculty, staff, and students from MSU, and we are so happy to have them here with us. But we also have recent graduates and students from other universities as close to us as Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan, and as far away as Jamaica. So the seminar speakers we've brought come from a number of universities across the United States, from Brandeis, Wisconsin, Northeastern Illinois, Thomas Jefferson University, and the University of Memphis. So strong is our enthusiasm that we are bursting at the very seams of the academy itself. For we brought with us practitioner colleagues who are putting Ubuntu into meaningful practice in communities from Lansing to Detroit, from Trenton, New Jersey, and New Orleans, Louisiana, to Jacksonville, Florida. So we are quite literally beyond ourselves with enthusiasm. Our abundant delegation is an intentional effort to become a catalyst for interconnection, so that we might together face the death of how things have been and imagine the possibilities of what might yet be. Alexis Pauline Gumbs insists that transformation requires vulnerability. And I have heard already in my short time here in Stellenbosch, indeed, I have felt it in my body, both the longer legacy of racism with which Stellenbosch University is reckoning, and the more immediate incidents you all are attempting to navigate now, including the loss of 2 students, which I just learned about this evening. We too at MSU are reckoning with institutional failures to protect members of our university community from sexual violence. And now with the resignation of our current president, we arrive in South Africa open and vulnerable, prepared for the death of what has been, and committed to imagining and enacting a more just and beautiful future together. May we find joy and hope and renewal in our work together this week. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for setting the sense making of the conference aptly, and for allowing us to start on a very vulnerable and open note. Before I invite you to the back, I think, Mariki, to the quad of the museum on really what is a beautiful evening, I want to do 2 other things. The one is to ask you to, when you have time, walk through here, and on Wednesday evening, you'll see it in the program. Join us for the official opening of the exhibition down here. It tells the very interesting stories through portraits represented by 2 artists deeply connected to the story of Ubuntu Dialogues, and that is Lillian Young with her series or portraits titled Wanted, Runaways from the series, The Problem with Archives on this side, and then also that of Pearl Mamatuba, Fugitive by Catherine Smith and Pearl Mamatuba. Fascinating exhibition, colleagues, in its own right. The one tells the story of runaway slaves, and the other of depictions in the news, letters written from and by slaves. Fascinating to see and to experience, given the nature of our conference and dialogues as well. The second is to thank my colleagues in the museum. Now, there's a number of faculty members here of both MSU and Stellenbosch University, and Priscalia, I almost think there's a photo of you on one of these posters. I do think so, now that I see you in the audience. There's one of Simon, I think there's one of you as well. And when given the fact that we have a number of faculty here, I want to do something that I really shouldn't do, Bongani, and that is to say thank you to the team in this museum. It is an absolutely wonderful team to work with. They had a 14-hour day week during the university's arts festival, where one of them personally buffed the floor that I see in front of me, the beautiful old floor as you enter. They worked from 7:30, went home, some of you, Alvandre, by 10, 11, 11:30, and here they are ready for a conference. I saw Natasha this morning with you, Mariki, bright, happy, and ready in service of a museum that is a wonderful space. So I really want to, Prof. Nico, thank my colleagues and members of staff for hosting us in this space. And I would like us to give them a round of applause. Thank you. We will also be in other venues on campus, except for touring around. You'll also be at the Faculty of Theology. These two spaces will be the centers of our engagement. A number of the Ubuntu students are here, a number of colleagues deeply involved in both research, in a number of, I see a lot of social science disciplines here, perhaps also others, student affairs practitioners engaged in the art making that is student life, and indeed also colleagues on both ends deeply involved in work linked to justice, linked to gender, race, and grappling with the issues of our history. So I look forward to that. And I think I told you this morning, we also have on campus 45 transformation managers from 23 of the 26 universities on campus as well. So it is a transformative week nonetheless, which means that Prof. Nico and I will move between the two venues during the conference as well, but I do think the two fits well. And then later in November, Kat and Marsha, I don't know how long you will be here, we will have a higher education conference on race and transformation, uprooting in an academic way the notions of race within academia in the South African and UK context with Bath University as partner, Nelson Mandela University, and of course Stellenbosch University. So thereafter, I hope I can start to land the plane and end what is a good, long, but exciting year as well. Let me not bore you any further. I invite you to the back. It's a beautiful evening in really the most beautiful month of the year, October. The leaves are green, the air is fresh. I'm very sure there will be a snack and something to enjoy at the back, Mariki. And whenever you see Mariki, make sure that you thank her for her effort over the last couple of 2 years. Is it 2 years now, Bonkani? My goodness gracious. For Mariki's tenure. She is not the only one here linked to the Ubuntu dialogues. There are also other colleagues, but please, Mariki, let me extend a special word of thanks to you for your effort. May it be a fantastic experience, and indeed may it allow both of our institutions the ability to openly reflect, learn, unlearn, let go, and hopefully also have the opportunity and the courage to continue in a new stride. Thank you very much, colleagues.